Hello everybody, today I want to show you a deck that I made. It's probably the worst deck that I have made in the last 10 to 15 years, and even the name is terrible. It's called Islandhomies. So what the hell is Islandhome, you may ask? Because it's not really an ability that you can see as a keyword, but it is a kind of an informal term for this absolutely terrible drawback that a surprising large number of blue creatures have. And it basically says that this creature cannot attack unless your opponent has islands in play, because you know it has to swim, and if your opponent doesn't have islands, how is it supposed to swim to your opponent? And it's even worse because this creature will be destroyed immediately if you have no islands in play. So again, this is the idea of flavor over mechanics and utility and gameplay, I guess, because the idea is that this creature will immediately die if it doesn't have any water to swim in. So, without any further ado, let me show you these island homies and island walkers actually, which is another almost forgotten ability now, but in any case, here they are. So, first of all, we have got Water Worm. Shouldn't be confused with Devouring Deep, because for a long time I thought that it's the same card, but no, it's not. And they are all, I would say, pretty bad. And this is just Merfolk of the Pearl Trident, except that it's not a Merfolk. It's quite ugly, it's quite disgusting, and not going to talk more about it. But then again, it's Ron Spencer, so he's actually masterfully drawing this card. He's doing it on purpose, so you know this card when you say it. You know his art when you say it, I would say. This worm gets +0/+1 if an opponent controls at least one island. So it's a 1/1 or 1/2 for 1 blue mana. Next, we have got probably the only good creature in this deck. This is Lord of Atlantis. So you know how good he is, you know how many variations of Merfolk I personally have played. This was my very first old school deck that I played 6 years ago, so time flies so fast. So interesting, really. But here, unfortunately, I don't have my favorite things, such as clones or Dance of Many or the Doppelganger to copy him and make our Merfolk stronger. However, he can pump those Vadelian Knights. And let's talk about Vadelian Knights, because they're the other Merfolk. Here, first of all, the art is gorgeous, right? Susan Van Camp. It is the Fallen Empires card. And 2/2 for strike, flying until end of turn for 1 blue. Okay, so it can jump out of the water on this sea horse, which is literally a horse that lives in the sea. Okay, and it's like a mer horse. Okay, for this Merfolk. All right, and yes, in any case, I just want to say that it has this island home thing again, sadly. Then we have got Devouring Deep, which I have already mentioned. It's 1/2 island walk, and I don't know how did they count that. So let's say 2 mana for 1/2 body. Quite bad, isn't it? And 1 extra for Island Walk. Again, blue is just not supposed to have good creatures. There are some exceptions, like this guy, for instance, but yes, you see. Probably the most interesting Island Home card is Dan Dan. So in case you don't know what Dan Dan is, it's not this boat, okay? It is this marvelous, really terrifying fish, which has an amazing 4/1 body. So even by modern standards, 4/1 is very powerful for a 2-drop card. But again, it's only 1 toughness, so basically it can be shot, even with desert, for an example. And again, don't ask me how it works, you know, island, going over this sea and then ending up in desert and being shot by it. Again, don't ask. So you see, that's why flavor-based mechanics don't always work. But then again, Dan Dan is nice, and you probably have noticed the major issue of this deck. It relies on your opponent playing island. Then again, we know that blue is definitely the most powerful color in old school, the most popular color if we judge by tournaments, and very often you would see some kind of blue splash. But then again, if your opponent doesn't have it, we have only one option, and that is of course to use phantasmal terrain. And even though there are 4 phantasmal terrains, we don't always get them. And, you know, mulliganing until you have phantasmal terrain, it's not ideal either. But then your opponent pretty much always has some kind of enchant removal or land removal. Okay, so at least they have a strip mine or a chaos orb. And as soon as this island is gone, you will be back to having those poor souls left without being able to swim into your opponent's waters and attack them there. Then we have one of my favorite arts, really. This is merchant ship. And how big is merchant ship? It's just 0-2. And if it attacks, why would it attack? It has 0 power, right? But if it's not blocked, you gain 2 life. So it's life gain in blue. How good is that? Of course, you have got life tap, which you know of, I think. But life tap is based on this very important idea that some kind of creature, color hate cards, color hosers as we call them, will give you the ability that is usually prevalent in that color. That's why, for example, you have got volcanic eruption, which is a blue way to punish red, and it will deal earthquake style damage, which is not normal, of course, for blue. And in life tap, you would gain 1 life for your opponent casting for tapping a forest, right? So again, that would be, of course, the idea of green, right? Because green is good at life gain. So in any case, here, this is actually relevant because it's not connected with any color, and blue is not supposed to get life, again, as we said, and it will be destroyed. So how many drawbacks did they have to have for this poor soul? And, you know, at best, it will be maybe 1, 3, or 2, 4, but again, I wouldn't count on that. And then we have got more creatures, of course. It's all about creatures, about island homies and island walkers, and some other synergy with islands. This is Giant Shark. I know that this card is getting mocked very often, and I heard of the Swedish old school community where Giant Shark, if I'm not mistaken, would go to the person who has the last place, and they have to play it. So, okay, it's some kind of a mark of shame. But 4/4 for 6 mana. Okay, could we have a 4/4 for 6 mana without drawbacks? Probably yes. And then again, if it blocks or is blocked by a creature that has taken damage this turn, because it can smell blood, okay, or I don't know, feel blood, how does it work in water? I don't care, but that's the thing. And it would gain +2/+0 and trample until end of turn, so it's a 6/4. So that's, of course, a nice thing, but then again, how is it supposed to work? How is it supposed to damage a creature? So how does blue damages creatures? I don't know. Maybe, you know, I have got a little synergy with pirate ship, but you can imagine how unlikely it is to happen, at least in the current old school environment. And next we have got pirate ship, since we started talking about him, about it, right? But okay, it's a ship. Cannot attack until, so again, Islandhome, 4/3, and I know, Timmy, if you're watching this, that you always lament the toughness of this ship because it is not bolt proof, and it can be killed by blocking Mishra that can self-pump, and that is true. But then again, is it really going to attack? That's the most important question. But at least it can shoot, okay? So it's somewhere, it definitely makes sense flavor-wise. It's somewhere far from your terrain. Okay, your opponent is hiding in the mountain, and you are coming from this pirate ship which sails through the waters of your island and just shoots at you from its cannons. Okay, so yes, pirate ship, really nice, like it, like this card. And next, Sunken City. So again, blue cannot have nice creature pump, I would say, cannot have nice pump spells. Unlike, for example, white, that does it without drawbacks, or black, which does it without drawbacks as well, and even 1 mana cheaper, well, half mana cheaper because it's colorless. I'm talking about Bad Moon, of course, and you must pay 2 to maintain this sunken city. And you know, it's very interesting. It's not the first time I've been playing this card. You can look back at one of my videos when I did a tournament report about playing the Dark Tournament, and there I also played this marvelous Leviathan, and I used sunken cities there. And the interesting thing about sunken city is that you will play it, and then you will kind of gamble, you know, because it basically slows you down because you have to pay 2 blue, so you're essentially going 2 turns back. But then you don't really know until you top deck. You don't know if you're going to be able to cast something, and then Sunken City would just slow you down. So it's always a gamble to know. Or maybe you're holding this marvelous sea serpent in your hand, and you have got, let's say, 5 mana. And then before drawing your card and seeing whether it's going to be a land or not the land, that you need to cast this marvelous Seeschlange, if I'm not mistaken. And you're going to decide whether to sacrifice it or not. So, yes, that's Sunken City for you. Next, Island Walk is another very important Fish Liver Oil card, another important card for an old school community. And as you know, there is the Fish Liver Cup, which takes place in Italy on this beautiful lighthouse. And yeah, so that's Fish Liver for you. Gives a creature Island Walk. So you can use that. Probably the only good card in this deck. I mean, in addition to Lord of Atlantis, at least a card that we see in tournament-worthy decks sometimes. This is, of course, Jammed at Home. And it's still too slow because I don't have any mana acceleration. Next, we have got, so yes, Sea Serpent, just a vanilla creature. Again, how hard would that be to exclude this drawback, eh? Because if you think of it, what have we got? We've got Water Elemental. And Water Elemental is 5/4 for 5 mana, not for 6, but for... I don't even want to talk about it. But next we have got Skull of Worm. So again, as I have said, we really rely on Phantasmal Terrain. So this is a weak attempt of me bringing back this Phantasmal Terrain. Again, probably could have just used a Recall, not Ancestral Recall, but just Recall itself, and Ancestral as well, of course. But yes, there are many ways that this deck can be improved, and first of them would be removing everything and putting good cards back, but that's fine. So, okay, one of the biblical things here, and again, why am I talking about those biblical, I would say, stories, right, plots? And you can see here and here both mentioned that. And actually in the new game Sorcery, I think they imitated this, and they also quote the Bible and some other things. So yes, in any case, so you part water and walk right through it. And how much does it cost? A lot. So it's double X. So this means that if you want to give Island Walk to 2 of your creatures, you must pay 5. And that's quite a lot. And again, think of just some similar cards. For example, you've got Winter Blast. Winter Blast in green, much better. Okay, taps your opponent's creatures. And if you tap them, of course, they will not be able to block. So why is it even necessary? Why is there such a strange obsession with Island Walk, Island Home, Island something? I don't know. And... it's so expensive, it makes cards so much worse. The cards that weren't even good in the first place. Okay, so this fish, okay? Absolutely beautiful art. Jesper Murphys again. And you can see this eye, okay? So it's a fish, all right? This beautiful 80s style, you know, vapor wave, I don't know, sunset, sunrise, yes, and those palm trees. So, you know, just a regular island until you see this. An amazing art, and the card is, of course, pretty bad. So that's number 1, Island Home, but number 2 is 3 mana to untap it, but it's not that terrible, okay? It's not such an expensive drawback. And I'm looking at you, Leviathan, but you know what? There is more than one Leviathan. And the Segovian Leviathan is much, much smaller. I don't know why, because if you look at it, it is swimming with some kinds of, I don't know, what are these? Whales, and whales are absolutely dwarfed by this Leviathan, but he's only 3/3, okay? He is even smaller than this pirate ship, which I'm absolutely sure is not even much bigger than the whale. But okay, again, I'm being picky about it, and this is not what I like doing with old school art, because this art is absolutely amazing. So can you guess the artist, in case you haven't seen? And the colors, of course, should tell you, and even more importantly, this absolutely amazing monogram, I think it's called. This is, of course, Melissa Benson. So interestingly enough, it's not such a bad card, because it's 3/3 for 5 mana with Island Walk. So that's actually okay-ish, I would say. And again, if we compare it to the other cards we've got here, but then we have got the king that eats absolutely everything, the beast, the absolute nightmare, and the absolute thing of beauty. Again, let's look at him. He has trample, unlike most of these cards. So only this shark can technically have trample, but then again, it's very unlikely that it's going to happen. And Leviathan costs 9, not 10 mana. But at what cost? At what cost do you untap him and even attack with him? So comes into play tapped, doesn't untap as normal, sacrifice 2 islands to untap, sacrifice 2 islands to attack. But again, this attack is expected to be devastating, and I did win a couple of games with Leviathan in my life, and it always feels incredibly satisfying. So there it is. These I wouldn't even say mediocre, because they're absolutely terrible island homies. So if you have any ideas on how to improve this deck, you know, without removing all of these island home cards, and to make it at least more or less viable, or maybe using some kind of protection, I don't know, just being able to survive until you manage to start attacking with those creatures, please let me know. But again, I wanted to say that it was nice to brew, played several games, and yes, the results were, as you would expect, pretty bad. In any case, thank you for watching, and I will see you soon with more competitive and also more janky decks in the future. Bye.